Greetings to all of you from the World Bank in Washington, D.C. My name is David Lennarz. I'm Vice President of Registrar Corp, and I welcome all of you to this seminar this morning entitled U.S. Food and Drug Administration Regulations Governing the Exportation of Food Products to the USA. I'd like to express my appreciation to the leadership of the Asian Productivity Organization for inviting me here to speak, as well as specifically recognizing Dr. Saeed of APO this morning. I thank all of you for attending today and hope that our time together will be educational and beneficial to your organization. I understand this morning we have participants joining us from Bangladesh, India, Iran, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, and I guess Pakistan's having some connectivity issues, so perhaps they'll be joining in. I wish I could give my presentation in all of your native languages, but I'm afraid instead of this taking an hour, it would take me many weeks or months. So before I begin, let me introduce to you Registrar Corp. Registrar Corp is a private company.
David, excuse me. Iran is not with us.
Okay.
So in this case, 5 countries except Iran. Yeah, thank you.
Very well, thank you. Registrar Corp is a private company. We're based in Hampton, Virginia, about 3 hours south of Washington, D.C. And at Registrar Corp, our goal is very simple. We help companies understand and meet U.S. Food and Drug Administration requirements. My goal today is to introduce you to some of the basic food safety requirements for exporting to the United States. And while I can cover these basics in our hour-long session together, it's not possible, of course, to go into great detail. But I do encourage you to ask questions at the end or to solicit questions, submit questions, I should say, to APO via email. But before I begin, let me just briefly share my thoughts with you about exporting to the United States or indeed to other countries around the world. A successful export program can make the difference between just a good business and a highly successful business. Well, 2010 and thus far 2011 have been difficult times for many companies in the food sector due to the global recession. The consumption in the United States of products imported from abroad continues to grow. Trends in immigration with our vast ethnic diversity in the United States, growing interest in ethnic foods by all Americans, as well as price advantages offered by companies in Asia and other developing nations will continue to fuel growth in imports here in the United States for many years to come. When it comes to when it comes to exporting, companies rightly so focus on the barriers, finding the right customer, negotiating a workable price and terms, organizing suitable logistics, and of course meeting the regulatory requirements of the importing country. And these are very critical steps. Don't let hearsay, however, about the U.S. market frighten you off. I often hear from companies, people at companies, that they heard from another company how much trouble they had with their shipment to the U.S., or that FDA is so strict and that the U.S. can be difficult to penetrate. And for those who don't prepare in advance of selling and shipping, then indeed the U.S. can be a difficult market to tap into. But really there are 2 approaches. There is the reactive approach and a proactive approach. And already the fact that you are here today indicates to me that all of you are taking the proactive approach to exporting. The reactive exporters are those who often call us after the fact, pleading for help in getting their container, their shipment released because it has been detained by US FDA. They're reactive because they have not adequately prepared in advance. They have not set up proper sanitary conditions in their processing. They're not producing under proper good manufacturing practices. They have no HACCP plans. They've not registered with the FDA or made sure their labeling or other requirements are indeed meeting the FDA regulations. So they react to unanticipated problems in production day in and day out. They react to unanticipated problems with their exports day in and day out. If you see yourself or your company falling into this trap, I encourage you to think about this. How much does a problem cost you? How much does a single detention in the U.S. or in Europe or elsewhere in the world really cost your company? Of course, there are two types of cost, if you think about it. There's the direct cost, the cost of finding the customer, the freight of your shipment, demurrage if a container is held up in the port, testing of the product, financing of the production, perhaps return freight, or even losing the product because it has to be destroyed. Then there are the indirect costs, a little less easy to measure, but equally important. The cost of losing a good customer, the loss of reputation, the loss of face. And keep in mind, reputation is not just your company's reputation. It can be ultimately end up being the reputation of your industry and your entire country as well. Past experience has proven what happens when a tainted product enters the market. Consumers stop buying not just that brand, but that entire category of product. Building a reputation of your company and your country can take years, but it can be destroyed in a matter of days or weeks. As a company, and indeed all of you in your industry have an important role to play in shaping the future reputation of your products and their country of origin. How that reputation develops is little by little, day by day, shipment by shipment, and you play a role, as does, of course, your government. I encourage all of you to consider this as you build your collective reputation and as you either build an export plan or continue to increase your exports to the United States. That being said, now I'd like to give you some guidance should you decide to focus more or perhaps for the first time on exporting to the United States. So let's get started with my presentation, and I'll give you a quick overview. I will focus on, firstly, a little background of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, their jurisdiction. I'll touch on some of the other agencies. I'll then talk about some of the key regulations, principally the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. I'll discuss some common misconceptions that companies have, and I will talk about a new regulation now on the law books here in the United States called the FDA, the Food Safety Modernization Act. So the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, it is a federal agency, not a state or local agency. It's under the Department of Health and Human Services, and it's organized into 7 different centers. Those centers, the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, Center for Veterinary Medicine, Center for Devices and Radiological Health, Center for Drug Evaluation, Center for Biologics, Tobacco, and a Center for Toxicological Research. So those are the principal centers that are regulating the various products under the jurisdiction of FDA. Now, the FDA actually plays 2 roles. Firstly, it is a gatekeeper. It is the licensing body that decides what drugs or medical devices, what food products, cosmetics, etc. are appropriate for the marketplace, and they set the standards often with public input and industry's input. They are also, though, the enforcers, the police. They are the enforcers of the regulations. They issue warning letters. They can work with our Customs and Border Protection Agency to seize product, and they can work with our Department of Justice on criminal prosecutions. Now, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which is the principal regulation that regulates all food and beverages, was first signed into law in 1938 by then-President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that has been, of course, amended many, many times over the years and has incorporated all new regulations that FDA has jurisdiction over up to today. The Code of Federal Regulations, also called the CFR, that is where the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act is detailed. The CFR is the codification of all the rules published in what we call our Federal Register by the executive departments and the agencies of our government, which FDA is one of. Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations is reserved for the Food and Drug Administration. Now, what products does FDA regulate? Specifically, food and beverages, medical devices, cosmetics, over-the-counter drugs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, prescription drugs, veterinary products, biologics, blood, tissues, vaccines, medical devices, radiation-emitting products, and tobacco. Those are the principal products they have jurisdiction over. Now, when it comes to food, it is the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition at FDA that their jurisdiction encompasses most food products other than meat and poultry, which is overseen by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So CFSAN, the Center for Food Safety, oversees agricultural products, processed foods, canned foods, seafood, alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, including water or other types of beverages, and seafood products.